You appear to have like a high moral value in terms of what you put out, what you make. Where does that come from?
I guess from the South. And this whole environment here was Southern. Everyone here was from the South, you know, Mississippi, Arkansas, you name it. And the church was very big.
So part of it is the way you were raised, your morals and your values?
Yeah, a lot had to do with it, you know. And my mother didn't allow us to do certain things, you know. If you wanted to go to show the movies, you had to go to Sunday school first. That was a condition.
What are the images of people of color that we're looking at? What lens are we looking at this time, and if you want to put it in a historical perspective?
We kind of stayed in our own little clique.
Right.
Which was good or bad. Because I think each one of them was trying to do something, tell our own story.
So what was the cinema then? What were you guys, I mean, for people of color, what was the bar? Who was setting the bar?
Well, I think when we got into third world films, that was a major.
That was kind of the beginning of a new era?
No, we had already started. We were searching for a kind of a vision what film should be about. It wasn't until we saw, you know, third world films, we began to see, oh, this is what we should be doing. The films that talked about social issues, the films that were...
Would change people?
Yeah, and so that was, I think for me, of a new beginning in a certain sense.
So you see these other filmmakers doing these films, but where are we? It's the 60s. Where are we as people of color? What are we being fed?
There were samples of things that we liked in certain films. The problem was, I think, what limited us from considering a lot of those things was the fact that we knew that we weren't going to be allowed to make those films. There was no way to get financing. There was no way for those people to understand what we wanted to do. We weren't in the union, you know. We had no family members in the business, you know, and it was relatively closed. You know, if you wanted to be a cameraman or whatever it is, you had to wait for God knows how long.
There was no options, really.
There wasn't Sundance, there wasn't any of those things. And Filmex did come about. Within a 2-year period, they killed that, you know, because Hollywood didn't want all these films out there. They wanted nothing but Hollywood films. The only thing that I think came about that really helped us was Pearl Bowser and Oliver Franklin put together a showcase of films that Black independent filmmakers made. And we toured those films around the country. And we would get feedback. That was the main thing, was getting feedback.
The audience would watch the films, yeah, and you would sit and see how they played in front of an audience.
And when we would talk about the film.
Did you ever get discouraged?
I don't think it was time for that. Because you were too busy trying to make another film and do this. And the issues and the problems you had in this the earlier film, you're trying to overcome them in the next one. So I think the thing that encouraged you was finding the opportunity to do another film.
So it was the hunger to get the next movie made, and so you were chasing funding and trying to figure it out.
Yeah, mostly trying to figure it out, because what happened is that, you know, when you make your first film, you try to put everything
in it.
Yeah, including the kitchen sink and everything. The problem is trying to eliminate that urgency, that sense of you need to put everything in, you know. You need to control yourself and say, well, I have to do it in another film. I have to put this in another film or something. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons I had to learn.
How did you keep going? I mean, like, you know, did you just find that your skin was, you know, tough enough to deal with rejection? And
I think you had to a certain extent, because I think what the other thing is, looking back on people who had worse than you did. In many ways, this was a luxury in a certain sense, because when you look at it, any kind of money you put on a film, it's like the expression of the stock market. The only time you should play a stock market or anything else, a gamble, is money that you can lose. If you're afraid to lose it, you can't play in the game.
So you looked at it as, this risk is worth it, and
it's worth it because I could afford it. And I was working. You know, I wasn't making a living making films, but I was working. And so I wasn't starving.
As we look back in history, were you like a cinematic activist? You were using cinema to create a whole new portrayal of people of color.
Yeah, I think we were all concerned about, you know, how we were going to tell our stories, you know, what's our aesthetics and all these kinds of things that you talk about and search for, you know. And we, like I said, we would argue, we would close restaurants talking about film and themes and
Politics of the day.
yeah, it was just like, and we would get in such heated arguments, we'd stop talking to each other for God knows what.
What was the big debate that would shut everything down? What was the debate?
Who was making black films? and we couldn't define what a black film was, but we kind of knew when we see it, this isn't, no, you know. And so we had a lot of those dumb arguments, you know.
What is a black film?
Don't ask me.